Hi, my oral report is on Peter Brook's book, The Open Space. I wanted to talk about the open space because I find it very interesting that a book written over 45 years ago is more apparent in today's society than it was written back then. And obviously, Peter Brooks began to write on just kind of the beginning of what was happening in theater during that time. One of my favorite moments is when I was reading the book was that he was talking about World War II happening just a few years ago, and that was like all of a sudden I was like, oh, this book was written 45 years ago and not 5 to 10 years ago. And specifically in the open space, I wanted to talk about the Deadly Theater. That one I found most interesting to me, and I think that's what my focus will be on for this report, is just going to be the Deadly Theater. Lately, a lot of my focuses and a lot of my papers have been structured around this idea of what the Deadly Theater is and why it's so struggling, and why theater, is so struggling in today's society. And and why it's on such a destructive path. And he starts off the Deadly Theater as describing the theater as a whore, which I thought was really funny because it originally meant that the theater was impure, that it was trying to do something that it wasn't, and that it was fiddled with things that are impure in terms of wanting to create something for the sake of creating something and not wanting to have some sense of purpose. But now the theater is even more so of a whore because of the fact that it's short on pleasure and it takes your money at the end of the day. The problem with a lot of theater today is all of a sudden we're not willing to spend $35, $45, $55, $65 to go see a play that could potentially be one of the worst things we ever see. And then it's boring, unlike film where we pay $8 to $12, which is still even a ripoff. But we go, and then if it's bad, then oh well, we kind of had a leisure activity for the night, and then we could talk about how bad it was with all their friends. But we can't really do that with theater because not all our friends go to see the theater. So I think in a lot of ways he's right that the theater is a whore because of the fact that A, it's impure, and B, it takes our money and delivers more often than not short on pleasure. But C, and this is something that he didn't write about, and something I kind of came on to the conclusion of right now, is that the theater's a whore because we kind of secretly visit it. A lot of times we don't tell people we visit it, and a lot of times we're like, yeah, I went to see this play, but I don't really want to talk about it. Unless you're amongst theater-going people, then you're amongst theater-going people, then it's all about, look what I did, and I saw this play, and let's talk about that, but not really, and it's more like, I went to go see the theater, look how theater gusto I am, or whatever. And then I found it pretty interesting, just to kind of keep on talking about the Deadly Theater, about how he went on to go to describe that a doctor can tell the difference between a lifeless entity, something that's dead and just a bag of bones, versus a lively being. Where we can't actually distinguish that anymore when we go to see the theater is we can't distinguish between something that's dead and stale and kind of in a roundabout way boring, and something that's alive and it's visibly aware and conscious of a living entity. So there's that. And then this is becoming more apparent to me as the book kind of goes on, is that he talks about movement in the sense that we take a lot of movement classes in being in being a theater major, and he kind of talks about that the deadly theater happens when all the stage directions are pre-described, leaving no room for improvisation or creativity. And that's not just with movement, but the idea that like we have found the right or correct way to do a play is baffling to me. And I've myself have been caught in this many times where I go, no, this is the right way to play Hamlet, or this is the right way that Macbeth thought, or whatever the format may be. We get caught in this idea that there's one way, and that somebody found out that one way how to do every single play or every specific play, and that we have to follow those grounds or else there's nothing. And then that's a lot also one way that the theater's a whore, because it's just reiterating and making us feel better. It's imitative rather than innovative, and that's what I was kind of just talking about. Is how often are we trying to imitate something that we saw? How often are we trying to focus our attention in a piece based off of something we've already saw, and then we hate something because it doesn't meet the expectations of something else, or we hate something because it's not what we believe that it was, that it should have been. But in reality, it should be innovative, and it should be different, and it should redefine what we believe in every time we go to visit the theater. And that's why a lot of theater today is deadly theater, because it's trying to imitate something that it saw. It tried to stifle a creativity because this is the right and correct way to do things. Oftentimes, the deadly theater approaches performances from the perspective, or I guess I've already been talking about this, but like I said, that somewhere someone has found the right way to do the play, and that's it's just circular logic, and it just defeats the purpose of why we create things. I'm going to invent a razor blade for the sake of shaving your legs, but it's a new way to shave your legs. You can go up and down, not just up and down, right? It just doesn't make sense. That was a really piss poor analogy, but there's that is. The deadly theater persists because it does not adapt to changing culture, and I found this really interesting. Because I wrote about this earlier, that the older generation has a very much tendency to do, this is the way we saw it, this is the way we want to do it, so we're going to do it again and again and again and again, and remain or keep the classics as just that, classics. But on the flip side of that coin, we have the young and enthusiastic theater students who have this absurd notion just to revolutionize everything. I'm going to take this piece, I'm going to modernize it, I'm going to create it, I'm going to make it my own thing, and it's going to be different. No one will have ever seen it before. And that's the problem, is that it's ahead of its culture versus being a part of its culture. And what's more exciting to me is when those two things blend. And I find it really exciting when you find a classic that has been updated and has been innovated for today's society, and it once again reaches out to us and grabs us by the shirt and says, this is what this is about, this is what fear is, this is what love is, this is what destiny is, or whatever it may be. Like take Macbeth, for example, when the three witches are no longer scary. When you go to see Macbeth, you see three witches, and you're like, ooh, double, toil and trouble. And it's not very frightening. It really isn't. But what if you take those witches and then make them succubuses and whores and something that our culture today is afraid of, and make them, give them sex appeal and lust, and not only just sexual lust, but bloodlust. And then all of a sudden we're grossed out and creeped out, and we go, that's what a witch is. That's the difference. That's innovative. That's structurally sound to our culture. And so often than not, we find out that we take the cheap route and we go, no, witches are witches because witches are witches, and you can't change that. No, don't change that. And even in an even poorer analogy, it's why so many people hate Twilight, because they've changed it, and because vampires can't be sparkly. But I don't know, I'm tangenting. And like I said earlier, the theater today is deadly because it's far more concerned in making money than really anything else. I just went and saw Miss Julie, and it was probably one of the best performances I've ever seen in my life. Neil LaBeouf adapted it, and Neil LaBeouf didn't do the best job at adapting it, I think. He kind of threw away some key components to Miss Julie, but in saying that, it was such a brilliant performance, and I won't really talk about it any much more because I wrote a paper on it, but tickets were like $70, and that's kind of absurd. Worth it, don't get me wrong, but it's the theater today is so concerned about making money and so concerned about making ends meet, and it all ties into obviously political things where you can make the joke that the rent is too damn high or whatever it may be, but it's just not suitable for our culture today. It's not suitable for college students. It's not suitable as a thing for a date. Which is really unfortunate, and I think that's why the theater is so deadly and is so dying, because we can't afford to go. We just can't afford to go, and it's disastrous in that sense. And then he kind of goes on to talk about structuring as an actor and why we as actors give in to deadly theater, or why deadly theater is being so vastly brewed, and that... And then I talked about dramatists, and then how so often than not dramatists have a sense of, I'm going to write everything in the stage directions. You're going to